Nikon Z cameras have some great autofocus capabilities, a lot of great tools to make sure you have sharp, fast, and accurate autofocus. But like everything else, there's a learning curve. You need to know how to use the systems to get the most out of it. So, what I want to do here is go through what I think are 5 autofocus tips that will help get you set up for faster and more efficient autofocus using the Nikon Z system. All of these tips are taken from the Nikon Z Photography Fundamentals course, where we go much further in depth into all of the focus systems, how to set up your camera, exposure, and a lot more. It includes quizzes and assignments and downloads. If you want to check out free previews for that course, you can find it in the video description. And if you want to go ahead and purchase the full course, as a viewer, you can get 20% off with the code TUBE20. So the first tip that I want to bring up is to take advantage of the Limit AF Area Mode selection option. You're going to find this option in the Custom Settings A group, Focus or Autofocus, and then look for Limit AF Area Mode. Normally, with the camera defaults, if you are changing your AF area mode using either the I menu or a custom control by rotating the command dials, you have to go through that entire list of every AF area mode available in that focus mode to get to the one you want. And you might be passing over modes that you never use. So you can take those out of the rotation. When you go into that menu, you just highlight the modes that you don't use, you never or you rarely use them, and then press the multi-selector right to remove the check mark from that option. For example, I've removed pinpoint, dynamic areas, these small custom 1 and custom 2 wide areas because I never really use those. And now when I go to the I menu or press a custom control assigned to AF area mode and I rotate the command dial, all I see are the ones that I use. You can do the same thing, picking only the ones that you use for your particular situation. You can still get to all of the available modes if you go to the I menu and either tap on or press OK on AF area mode. That full list still comes up. Same thing in the photo shooting menu. But the command dials are a lot faster way to switch through these modes, especially if you get rid of the ones that you never use. The next nice little feature available is Store Points by Orientation. If you're constantly changing the camera orientation between horizontal and vertical, but you want to focus in the same place, you're going to have to be moving that focus point around every time you change the camera orientation. Well, you can save where that focus point is for each of the 3 different orientations. Whether that's horizontal, grip up, or grip down, you can have that focus point saved in 3 separate locations for each one of those. So if you go again into the Custom Settings A group, Store Points by Orientation, turn this on, set Yes. And now when you change the focus position for either a horizontal or a vertical camera orientation, it'll be saved the next time you go to that orientation. New cameras actually have 3 options here. There is Store Points by Orientation, which behaves the same as how I just described, and then there is Store Points by Orientation and AF Area Mode. This means that you can not only have 3 different positions for each camera orientation, but you can also have 3 different AF area modes for those. For example, you might be using single point in the lower third of the frame for a horizontal orientation, single point in the lower third of the frame for a vertical orientation with the grip down, and a large wide area in the upper third of the frame, maybe for like a portrait, in the vertical orientation with the grip on the top. So now whenever you rotate the camera, it's going to go to the last position and AF area mode that was used in that orientation. And that can be a much faster way to make sure that your focus is where you want it, so you don't need to keep changing it around, moving it to a new location every time you change how that camera is oriented. If this is off, then that focus point is going to be in the same absolute position on the screen, regardless of the camera orientation. Then there is Save Focus Position, which is kind of related. You'll find this option in the Setup menu, and I would recommend turning this on. When you cycle the camera power, if this is off, that focus point is going to be reset back to the center of the screen the next time you turn the camera on. Well, if you're constantly cycling power, but you're focusing in the same area of the screen, you're going to want that to be saved so that you don't have to keep moving that focus point every time you cycle the power. Now, the Nikon manual does warn us that there are some conditions where, regardless of how this is set, that focus point position may or may not be saved when you cycle the camera power. So just be aware of that. Every time you turn the camera on, make sure that focus point is set where you want it. And if you want it to be saved to your last position, in most situations, turn this setting on. You and or your camera also might have a more difficult time focusing in low light. There's just not enough light coming into that sensor to provide enough contrast for the autofocus system to work. Well, every camera has a setting that can help out with this. If you go into your custom settings D for shooting or display, you'll see either view mode or apply settings to live view. If you have apply settings to live view, you can turn this off. If you have the view mode photo live view option, set this to adjust for ease of viewing, custom, set picture control to adjust for ease of viewing. And this will make your display appear more like an SLR. You're not going to see all of your camera settings, including your exposure settings. You might find it easier to focus in low light now, but you do need to be aware that you're not going to be able to preview your exposure. So either use your meter, which is covered in that course, or toggle the setting off and on so that you can check your exposure settings and then turn it back on so that you can more efficiently focus in that low light. This sometimes works. It's not something that you can use all the time. It does have its limitations, but there is another setting in the newer cameras called Starlight View. If you're in extreme darkness, you can turn on Starlight View, which is the next option in that menu. And the camera's really going to slow down. It's going to gather as much light as it possibly can from what's there and kind of pile that up and add it onto one another so that you can more easily see your composition in the monitor. Because it is slower, you may want to compose a little bit slower. Give the camera time to catch up every time you change your composition. But you will find it a lot easier to not only see your scene, your composition, but also focus in these really dark environments. And then finally, a lot of Nikon photographers aren't taking advantage of customizing the lens function buttons. Either LFN, which this lens has, it just has one function button. Some other lenses have two function buttons, LFN2, and these can be customized by you to various different focus functions, including focus functions that are found nowhere else in the camera. So go into your custom settings F for controls, F2 custom controls for shooting, and then go to LFN or LFN2. For example, I have my LFN, my lens function button, programmed to AF area mode, 3D tracking, plus AF on. So no matter which AF area mode that I'm in, as long as I'm in continuous autofocus where 3D tracking is available, I can push this button and instantly start tracking something and command autofocus. It's going to start commanding autofocus at the position where, whatever AF area mode you're using, where that is. Or if you're in auto area AF that's using the entire screen, it's going to start tracking at the last position used. So just be aware of that, but it is a really nice feature. You're in auto area AF, taking up the whole screen, and you want to start tracking and focusing on one little tiny point. All I need to do is just push this button instead of going into the menus and changing things around. Some of the other focus functions available here, they're camera dependent, but you'll find select center focus point, which resets the point back to the center, save and recall focus position, so you can have a saved position set if you want to use it. You can switch eyes from one to another. You can cycle the AF area mode and then choose which options you want to have when you cycle those modes. You can set a specific AF area mode with that button, choosing from the list, or do that and command autofocus, which is what I do. You can toggle the Starlight view or the view mode, as I just described a few minutes ago, and you can also toggle the focus peaking display. Just go through that list and see what you might want to use for the type of photography that you do. So taking all 5 of those things into consideration, you're going to find that you can use this camera to autofocus a lot better, a lot easier. If you want to learn even more focus tips and other tips for using Nikon Z cameras, again, check out that course linked in the description. Watch all of the free previews you want. If you do want to go ahead and take the full course, get 20% off for my YouTube viewers with the code TUBE20. Please let me know if you have any other questions or comments. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.